Hi, I'm Ryan Herbst. I'm Chief Strategist with UnifiedCommunications.com, and I am super excited to be joined by Michelle Ritz, Product Marketing Manager for North America at Jabra. Michelle, welcome. Good to see you again, to reconnect. Excited to hear about what Jabra is up to. How have you been?
Very well. Thanks for having me again, Ryan. Really looking forward to talking to you.
Absolutely. Continues to be, I know, we've spoken before, and the last time we spoke, we were talking about hybrid work, and I presume probably the next time we speak, we'll be talking about hybrid work. It is certainly a learning experience and very, very interesting moment for all of us. And I know Jabra is really at the epicenter of this with some exciting products. And I'm excited to get the update. So it's just set the stage, and you will keep this casual as we always do. Make it a discussion. I'd love to just hear kind of what Jabra is seeing right now in terms of hybrid working environments. How are they developing at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. And great question, Ryan. And, it's interesting that you mentioned last time we spoke, we talked about hybrid, and it's still a buzzword and a top of mind for, organizations, employees. And what we're seeing at Jabra is, when we talked about it previous, it was something that organizations were planning for and, thinking about. And now I think what's evolved is that we're all really living it. And it's become something that organizations are adjusting to as people are going back into the office, and they're having to think about how do you seamlessly transition from working from home and working in the office. Are the meeting rooms equipped with the right equipment? Are there collaboration spaces? And I think ultimately as well is what's going to drive people to the office. We've all proven over the last 2 years, almost 2.5 years, that we can work productively remotely. So I know a lot of organizations are talking about employee well-being and getting people back into the office, and what those drivers will be.
There's no question, and I think that. We know a couple of things. We know that in terms of remote work, that from the data that the data is coming in kind of overwhelmingly clear that employees want that to be either exclusively what they do, which many of them want. We know this based on just how popular all remote jobs are versus hybrid and certainly in office jobs. But I think there is some magic, and I think we know that from a human connection perspective, there's value in getting together, and I think this hybrid mix, or really trying to establish what that means for a given organization, is the most mainstream concept that we're seeing versus the kind of the extremes of all remote or kind of all back to the office, which we know is a pretty hard story to drive these days. But yeah, one of the things that we're certainly learning in kind of looking at the customers that are having good experiences and where it's working is just trying to kind of leverage the what is the magic that's happening in the office, and trying to make sure that you tie that kind of the experiences that make more sense together that you can do in a shared space, that you tie that to the work that you're doing. And so it's less about Tuesdays everybody comes in the office, and more about when we're doing these types of meetings or this type of work. And so I think it's a little harder to do, but that seems to be kind of what is really working from a hybrid perspective. And then certainly, and I know we're going to talk more about it, the story has to be strong everywhere. Like, we need a strong story on the remote side. We need a very strong story in the office to ensure that when they are trying to have those magic moments, that we've got the right technology that's engaging, that kind of draws them in, and that they feel that difference, that there's there'll be some folks who couldn't make it. They'll be on the remote side of the call, but for those that can, they're going to have an elevated experience based if we do our jobs right in the office.
So sure, and two great points of what you all just said, Ryan, is really, I think, the autonomy too. It's not really this, Monday, Wednesday, Friday I'm in the office, Tuesday, Thursday I'm from home. It's the autonomy to be able to decide, what do I need to get done this week, and where am I most productive to do that? If it is an individual task and I can do that at home, that's great. But if it's something where I need to collaborate, going to the office and actually meeting with people, in person, nothing really replaces that, face-to-face communication, having that engagement, that connection, that really drives, productivity and just the workplace culture. And then aside from that, the other call out, as you were talking, I really think is important, is not only considering the people that are in the office. How do we ensure that when we do have these meetings, that we're considering the people that are remote, because there will be, and we're seeing it now. Some people are physically in the office and some people are still dialing in remote. And that equity of being able to ensure that all participants feel like they can participate, have access to what's going on in that meeting, and feel like they're on the same level footing is really important and critical to driving that productivity and continuing to make hybrid working, a successful use case.
Could not agree more. Yeah, I guess as customers are leaning into hybrid work, what are some of the high level challenges that organizations are facing as they kind of prepare? I know the customers are at different phases of this. Several of them had planned to go back, and based on different pandemic waves, have delayed that. Some of them are kind of fully in the mix. But yeah, what are some of the high level challenges that you see organizations facing?
Number one really is that uncertainty. Return to offices, I think we've seen over the last few years, we're opening the office, well, now we're kind of delaying it. So I think that has been a big challenge, but also the spaces. Organizations typically had headquarter locations where everybody had a desk, and now that's not really needed. If I'm not in the office every single day, I don't need to have a specific desk that I call my own. There could be the hot desking situations or collaboration spaces. So just really rethinking the real estate and how that's set up within the office, and that seamless transition of, how do I work from home to the office? Being able to be productive within that transition, and then just having the right tools to do that. Making sure that when I'm home, I can still connect and be as productive. I have great quality video. I have audio that's going to work, and not have to worry about IT tickets. And when I'm in the office as well, where do I go? If I don't have that desk any longer, then where do I actually go to do my work? So ensuring that there is a plan and a seamless transition of how do you work from home and how do you work in the office is really going to help. And those are some of the pain points we're seeing at the moment.
No, it makes total sense. And I think you bring up some great points around wrong spaces. I think both in terms of, was historically kind of the conference room. And I think that may be a constraining kind of term these days, but just the spaces that we get together in what was the office, those were largely designed for across the table engagement. And definitely, they may have had pre-pandemic some ability to connect remote folks. I think we're definitely have a different perspective in terms of equity and the value of that and the necessity to kind of bring that to spaces. And so, yeah, I know that there's a lot of work, and I'm excited. I know we'll talk in a little bit about some of Jabra's products, but I think Jabra's doing some really innovative things inside conference room or in shared spaces. And the other point I think you brought up is that yeah, it's everywhere. We need to make sure because the use of these spaces is so different than it was before. I'm popping in for a variety of reasons. It could be that I have a hard time doing focused work at home because my office mates, dogs, kids, family are loud, and I just want to pop in somewhere and go into a little focus room or book a hot desk and just work. I think that's maybe not the most common scenario. More common is I'm looking for some of that engagement. So I'm going to go in today, but I have 2 meetings in shared spaces, but I'm going to book a hot desk. And so what type of gear, what do I bring with me? What's going to be there waiting for me when I go to this, what I used to have kind of dedicated space, and now I don't have dedicated space. I want to make sure that whole experience is seamless and makes sense. And then even at home, I think we know that so many people still have the devices that were kind of sent to them in the early days of the pandemic, and supply chain was super constrained, and everybody felt like it was going to be temporary. And so a lot of the decisions that were made back then, which was grab any kind of webcam we can get and let's get them any headset or just figure out a way to get them connected. It's really making sense these days to kind of have that go back and look again at kind of how do we harden the experience across all of these areas, and is the equipment that we've equipped our remote workers with the ideal equipment, knowing that this is not temporary, and we want to provide the best possible experience for them to be seen and be heard. So yeah, I know there was just plenty of those decisions kind of that were made more under the gun than based on kind of taking a step back. And I think there's products now that were kind of born and inspired from the pandemic that were built for remote work that kind of didn't necessarily exist pre-pandemic.
Very true. We're definitely seeing that shift from a reactive, use what you can find, the audio and the video on your laptop is sufficient, to a proactive, what do we need to equip our employees with to make sure that they're engaged? When we talk about some of the challenges that the organizations and employees themselves deal with, it's there's a lot of digital fatigue, where we're jumping from call to call, spending lots of days on calls. So how do we ensure that we're still getting that connection, we're still being productive? Having to deal with audio issues or bad quality video has an impact on how you connect with the person you're talking to, but even just the content that you're sharing, and just worrying. I think we know from our insights at Jabra too, is employees are concerned about how their careers are going to progress. If I am one of those people who are not in the office frequently and I don't have access to the same resources or face-to-face time with my manager, how's that going to affect my career long term? So thinking about those, just relationships and developing those, giving people equal access is really going to help drive that, across the board.
I could not agree more. And I think digital fatigue is certainly real. I think all of us who are in this kind of meeting to meeting culture, and there's some science and clearly certain layouts visually, certain ways of structuring an environment are less fatiguing than others. And I know we'll talk about even like the concept of front row with Panicast 50 and some of the things that you guys are doing that I think are creating so a really a big part of creating kind of that equitable experience. And yeah, I know we'll get to that soon, but I think Jabra is kind of at the forefront of some innovation in that realm. So yeah, I guess on the product side, based on the challenges that we talked about around hybrid and remote working, particular solutions that you wanted to kind of share that Jabra can offer to help organizations and employees kind of that speak to some of the pain points?
Absolutely. And we definitely have a great array, and continue to your point, Ryan, as we've lived through the pandemic, have introduced new products to combat those, pain points. And we know from an office worker perspective, if you're somebody who needs to collaborate from time to time, but also concentrate, one of the biggest pain points of an open office is noise and interruptions. We have our Evolve 2 lineup, which is really meant for people who are working hybridly to be able to have something that they can carry with them. They're certified. And professional devices, and we kind of get that question, what does that mean? It means that you're going to get that certification with that platform that you're using, and not just one, it's across different platforms, integration. So being able to have that dongle that's going to give you that connection, so that you're not going to worry about IT tickets. When we talk to IT decision makers, we know they're spread thin, and now they're having to deal with more and more tickets because people are calling in remotely, and they don't have access to being able to just go up to their desk and help them resolve the issue. It's being done remote as well. So ensuring that you have the link dongle to be able to connect, being able to have the ANC to block out a noisy environment. If your coworkers are getting a little rowdy behind you and you need to concentrate, being able to block out levels of how much of the environment you want to block out or let in. Do not disturb busy lights. If you think about that, all our Evolve 2 products have a busy light. Automatically turns on when you're in a call, so people know that now's not the best time to be interrupted, or you can turn it on yourself, so that way people know now's not the best time. I kind of need to concentrate. And we think about that from an office perspective, but you mentioned your home coworkers, and I think a lot of people have noted that their kids know when that light is on not to interrupt, and it's just the way that we have to work these days.
Pavlovian method. Yeah.
Yes. The light is on, go ask dad, yes, or go ask mom,
Exactly.
So it's been great. And even just expanding that to, the headset I'm wearing now is our Engage 55. It's our newest within our call-centric lineup, because what's interesting is we've all become call-centric people. That's how we've relied on connecting over the last few years. So having a product that is lightweight, that has a great boom arm, that's gonna, I don't have to worry about the dog barking, or you hearing that if the doorbell rings. So just thinking about the use cases and providing products for people depending on how they're working. If I'm somebody who needs to connect all day long and relies on conversations, having a lightweight headset that I don't have to take off or worry about distracting me from productivity is really crucial.
It's interesting that one of the things I found as I've been spending more time in the office these days, I was almost all remote like most of us, and these days I am finding real value in being 2 to 3 days, sometimes more in the office based on the meetings and work and think just when it's making sense. But one of the things I found is that I guess I got accustomed to not hearing a lot of background noise. So I don't have that kind of coworker challenge. I've got a real kind of dedicated space, and so I went for whatever it is, a couple of years without really hearing a lot of side conversations when I was doing focus work. And so one of the things that's been really helpful to me is I have an Evolve 2 with that has noise cancellation. And that has been super helpful because I do need this ability to kind of virtually close the door when I'm doing focused work in a shared space. And I know a lot of people have that same requirement at home. They've got kind of the reverse scenario where it's really hard to concentrate but yeah, something fundamentally changed. I think just having spent a lot of time without hearing a lot of background noise inside conversations, that all of a sudden, they were challenging for me. But it's one of the roles that these types of devices, I think people don't necessarily realize. Certainly there's mainstream awareness that you need these as basic tools, but I think some of what they can do around solving background noise or helping increase kind of focused work or mitigating just other challenges in the environment, or some of the value that comes with really taking a step back and making sure we're pairing the right device with the right user.
Exactly. And when we think about, additional use cases, as on the flip side of what you're saying, you were used to quiet. We've had use cases where people now returning to the office have been so used to being alone that they don't realize how loud they're talking in the office.
Yeah,
so we've had a few organizations
sure.
come to us and say, that now that they're wearing headsets and having conversations, they're being really loud. So within our Evolve 2, we have a great feature called side tone, which means the user can hear how loud they're being. So they're not that person screaming in the office, and distracting everybody else. So
we all know someone who could benefit from that for sure.
Absolutely. And it's an easy feature to turn on. So, definitely a great lifesaver when there's that one person who's taking over the office and being a little loud.
So Evolve 2 lineup, it makes tons of sense. I think those are very innovative products for in terms of personal device. What about the video collaboration side, where I know Jabra is putting a lot of focus as well?
Absolutely. And we've seen as well new products within our PaniCast portfolio. And I think video is going to be that critical piece that organizations are looking at to drive that equitable access. And it's just going to be, it used to be nice in some larger conference rooms where you had that. Now I think it's going to be everywhere. It's going to have to be everywhere so that people can connect. And within our portfolio, we have solutions for individual users. So intelligent video conferencing device, the PaniCast 20 that I'm using. And when you think about, when we talked about that digital fatigue, when I'm in front of my screen all day, presenting or sharing information, you think about how you're framed within that screen. And what's great is that the PaniCast 20 has intelligent features that is automatically going to frame you in the best, your head and your torso. So it's going to ensure that you are in that best visual frame, even if you move around. So that when you think about that from digital fatigue, it allows you the, ability to move around, to be dynamic and not be static in front of you, your computer. And then we even have conferencing devices, our PaniCast 50, our intelligent video conferencing device for either bring your own device solutions or for room systems. So really a intelligent device that's going to allow people to have solutions for different uses and use case spaces within the office.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And I'd like to maybe underscore, I think where both these products, 20 and 50, 20 in terms of personal device, bringing some camera intelligence kind of to the desktop is super, super important. The 50 for us right now is really proving to be useful as everyone is trying to rethink kind of what is this kind of next level of experience that could take place in a shared space. And so I think when we think about rooms, there's kind of there may be more, but there's at least three kind of approaches that we're sharing with customers these days, conversations that we're having. We know Microsoft is having as well. One of them is we could take a fairly traditional approach to this room. We're not going to change the furniture. We're not going to change the orientation. We'll probably keep it. It's still a traditional rectangular room. We're going to add some technology to that room so that remote folks can participate and that we can have a hybrid experience. But there's only so far we're kind of willing to go. We don't want to reduce the capacity of that room. We want to keep a fairly traditional feel. That's an option, and we see a lot of customers doing that for some of their rooms. But increasingly, I think customers are looking to go further. They're really asking, how do we lean in from a hybrid perspective and really create the most engaging experiences we can, both in the room and for folks on the remote side. And they're open to some changes. It could be changing the furniture or changing the orientation or reducing the capacity of that room a bit because they're not, they're in a hybrid mode and they don't have the same level of attendance in a given room that they had. Or they're looking to do this with just a handful, maybe a couple of rooms per floor. They want to really kind of make sure that if you've got a meeting that has remote participants, that this is kind of where you go when you want to have the ultimate experience. And PanaCast 50 is, I would say, a super critical kind of piece of that story for us because it allows us to kind of turn the orientation of that room, use kind of the wide wall instead of the far wall in a traditional rectangular room. Leverage some kind of widescreen technology for the displays, either with LCDs or projectors or video walls, and then take a camera like PanaCast 50 that allows us to see really wide because it has this ability to do up to 180-degree field of view, but also has the intelligence to then really provide that engaging experience where it can do kind of traditional speaker tracking. It now has the new firmware that gives us an ability to provide kind of a segmented view of folks in the room. But you pair that with what Microsoft is doing with Front Row, and we have an experience where the folks in the room have an elevated scenario. They're looking at people who are largely eye level and close to human size and at natural angles, not blocking each other. They have the ability to see content, but also a lot of what they've been missing when they're sitting in conference rooms, which is chat and reactions and shared notes coming, all of that world. And then our remote participants have an elevated experience because the capability of the camera and the fact that the camera, the physics is right, where it's directly facing folks and it's got the intelligence to highlight who's speaking. And so we love this story around what's being called kind of an optimized for a hybrid room and how PanaCast 50 fits so well into that story.
And to your point, we keep expanding on that, with the value pack and being able to expand on that intelligent meeting experience. When we think about over the last 2 years, and you and I, even right now, we have meeting equity. We are both the same size, calling in remotely. So how do we replicate that going forward to ensure that the far end participants still get that same experience? And that's where, features like that dynamic composition, where you'll be able to kind of see that tiled view, even highlighting the last, 2 to 4 speakers, so that you're really being able to interact with what is happening in that meeting. When you think about a traditional, foreign participant calling in and what they see, it's really, that bowling alley view of just kind of head after head doesn't really work because you're not getting that dynamic experience. You're not being able to see who's, talking, even identify like what's happening in that room, to your point of facial expressions, interactions. And then you take that a step further if you think about, a room where you have a whiteboard or an area of interest, being able to, as a far end participant, see what's happening, if there's brainstorming and there's notes or action items. The PanaCast 50 is a certified content camera, so you can have that streamed and the far end participants can see what's happening on that whiteboard live, real time, so that they're able to participate and have access to that, which is just, really thinking about how everybody within that room, everyone within that meeting, remote or actual participant, can have access to the same information and what's being shared in that room.
No, there's no question. And I think this is a product because we throw around this term meeting equity a lot. It's a buzzword. Hybrid's a buzzword. It's really easy to say, but really where the rubber hits the road, there's a lot of hard work, and not all devices are equal. And so I think where we're really trying to create meeting equity, there's a high bar, both in terms of the folks that are outside of our shared spaces and those that are inside shared spaces. And again, I think commend Jabra for what they're doing from a device perspective to help really support and create meeting equity.
Awesome.
One of the things I know. I'm not sure we spoke about this last time, but I think the role of device management, as well as kind of the investments, are outside of the firewall, and a lot of there's real money being spent on devices that are sitting not just in the office but at people's homes. Keeping track of those devices, being able to manage and ensure that their settings are appropriate, that people are having great experiences, to be able to troubleshoot, as well as the products that are in the office. I think this idea of having tools that allow us to manage our headsets and update the firmware of our meeting room devices and be able to gain some insights is super important. So maybe share a little bit around kind of Jabra's philosophy around device management, because this, I think, is an emerging an important topic that is also kind of somewhat more pronounced pre-pandemic. It's not that we didn't talk about device management before, but we definitely have a geographically dispersed estate of devices and investments, kind of much more so than we did pre-pandemic.
And that's something Jabra has always prided ourselves on, about being able to have, device management either for the individual person. So, as a person, you could just download Jabra Direct on your device. That way you get all the latest firmware, your device is working to the latest specifications and enhancements. Also personalization. We know that people have, different needs in how they hear. So being able to change settings, so to be able to personalize, customize that experience as well. And then also from an organization perspective, being able to have our Jabra Express, so you can see what's deployed, push out firmware. To your point, if you want a certain group to have the same settings, change those as well. So really being able to have that as a value add. Jabra Direct and Express are available free of charge as a value add that you could, again, an individual can download on their PC to be able to make changes, or the organization can push out on cloud or on-prem. And then we even took it a step further, Ryan, because we do know, organizations sometimes have admin access, rights where I can't personally download. So when you think about, the Evolve 2 lineup, we are actually started to incorporate some of those personalizations and customizations within our Sound Plus app. So that means you can download it on your mobile phone and you can change the settings. You can adjust the ANC in the different levels. You can go in and just make customizations and personalizations on your mobile phone. Because we also know that there's that blur now between work and leisure. So the headset that I'm using to, talk to you, I could then connect and use to enjoy, to my tablet and or take calls with. So it's just about being that device that gets people through the day and they can use on different devices.
Could not agree more. Yeah, no, super important and free, right? I guess from in terms of Jabra's story around device management.
Yes, a great value add, and just from an IT perspective, being able to have one place to see what's deployed, to even troubleshoot, it is really just a great resource. And when we hear, IT decision makers really enjoy having that ability to have that view in one location.
Wonderful. Well, I think we maybe have time for, I guess I wanted to share a little in terms of kind of what Unified Communications is doing in terms of what we're seeing is kind of most effective way as customers are looking to plan and execute a strategy around return to work and hybrid. And on our side, we're finding it most effective to start with planning. This is often done, via a workshop on our side. And the goal is to establish what does success look like? What is our North Star? And so we spend a bunch of time, we cover things like device management, and big piece of it is trying to hone in on both the personal devices that we would use at home. What would a hot desking environment look like? What do we do in kind of what was traditionally the phone rooms? And then how do we think about shared spaces in terms of categorizing and creating some standards? And once we have this kind of mapped out, then it allows us to go into a proof of concept with, again, that kind of sense of what our North Star is. And so this has been important. Generally, as part of this, we're doing it kind of portfolio where we'll share kind of renderings and bill of materials and line drawings and budgetary information that also gives organizations kind of what they need as they're working with their management teams and real estate teams and other stakeholders on kind of looking a little bit further out, and just knowing that these are, the world changes really fast. We can want to take a snapshot with them and help them develop some standards that will need to be kind of evolved over time. And from there we go into proof of concepts, and where we find success, then we hit the gas from a deployment perspective. And then certainly I should mention that adoption and change management is probably, it's also kind of part of our secret sauce. We know that there is just a huge benefit by leveraging the ACM, adoption and change management, rather than just kind of throwing out devices. Certainly things are easy to use these days. There's just a lot of in terms of really finding the right ways to work efficiently in this hybrid environment. There's some best practices. There's a lot that can be learned, and so that for us is a big piece. That adoption and change management team is making a big difference once we're kind of at a stage where we understand what the plan looks like.
That's great. And I think very similarly aligned to, Jabra too. It's about discovery. You talk to a customer and you kind of want to understand what's happening in their organization. What are their pain points? What are their projects? Their goals for the next few years, so that we could, our sales force, our channel partners, our resellers can provide the solution, the right product solution for what they're looking to, build out. So definitely I think discovery is really, important to just kind of get what they're looking for before, it's just a bunch of, hey, look at this headset and look at these features. It's really understanding how they're going to use it.
I couldn't agree more. I think we've learned that it's super exciting to just send hardware out. Everybody wants to get to that point quickly.
The latest and greatest, right? To try it out, but
we do want to take one step back and just make sure that because we have a lot of options and a lot of choices, that we hit the mark. Well, Michelle, this has been a ton of fun, and I'm glad we were able to get back together. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us and to share Jabra's story. Jabra really has some innovative products right now that can really help customers that are looking to lean into hybrid, that want to provide true meeting equity, that are looking to enhance engagement and to kind of thrive in this hybrid world. I'd encourage anyone who is watching this broadcast to reach out to us at unifiedcommunications.com. One of our device strategists would be happy to engage with you one-on-one. We can go run through Jabra's portfolio and ways that Jabra's products, again, can really make a difference. And so, I just wanted to say, huge thank you. And I don't know if there are any last things that you wanted to share in terms of ways to engage, but I think folks could reach out to us, and we could even do some kind of joint meetings with Jabra and customers.
Happy to. And again, Ryan, thanks so much for having me. Great conversation as always. And feel free to invite me back anytime. And definitely joint ventures for any customers who are interested would be a great next step.
Yeah, we'd love to do it. Thanks again. With that, we'll call it a wrap.